Well, hello everyone. I am very off-center today instead of slightly off-center because it is that time. It is the end of 2021, the start of a new year, and this is my 2021 year in review video where I go through all of my reading stats for the year. So I'll be flashing up all sorts of pretty being relative graphs and diagrams and numbers on the screen right next to me so you can see all of the fun nitty-gritty statistics. Let's talk about the total number of books I read this year. This year I managed to read 208 books. 208, which is utterly ridiculous. Absolutely wild. The most books I've ever read in a year ever, as opposed to in 2020 I read 111 books, which is still so many. I still can't believe I read 111 the previous year, and this year I completely smashed it. Too much time at home, I guess. With these number of books read, I have the total number of pages read. So this year I read 66,758 pages versus 2020, which was 44,151. So obviously I read more books this year, so the page count is quite a bit different. This is interesting though. The average book length for both years is, for 2021, I read an average book length of 340 pages, whereas 2020 was 412. So I was reading much longer books in 2020 versus 2021, which is kind of interesting. My average star rating is pretty much the same for both years. In 2021, it was 3.98, and in 2020, it was 4.0. I rate things very highly, I guess. I enjoy quite a bit of what I read, and keep in mind these numbers are a bit skewed because I do reread quite a bit, and a lot of my rereads end up being 5 stars, so that kind of drags that average up quite a bit. As far as the numbers on rereads, this year 30% of the books that I read were rereads versus 70% were new to me, meaning that 60 of the 208 books that I read were rereads. 60 rereads. And then 148 were new to me. This is really interesting because in 2020, I also reread 30%. 30% of the books that I read were rereads. So apparently that's trending for me. As far as genres, my genres changed wildly this year. I read a lot of romance. So my number one genre is fantasy, with 31% of the books I read being fantasy, which is 62 books. Then my next highest genre is actually romance. 26% of the books that I read this year are in the romance genre, which is incredible, and I'm so happy with that. But that ends up being 52 books. 52 romance books this year. Wild. And then sci-fi with 24.5% or 49 books. I'm really happy with my top 3. I was kind of trying to read more sci-fi this year, and I'm pretty happy with the amount of sci-fi that I read, but I really had a good time with both romance and sci-fi, so I want to keep those numbers up just because of how much I've been enjoying. The other genres are varying degrees, not much to speak of except for nonfiction. 7.5% or 15 books were nonfiction. I read some horror, some thrillers, some mysteries, a noir book, and a few historical fiction. Unfortunately, I managed to read some contemporary books, and I did not enjoy them because I don't enjoy contemporary, but those books were kind of like, I didn't realize they were contemporary until it was too late. The age range for most of the books I've read were adult books. 71% of all books that I read were adult, and that's about 142 books. Young adult was 15%, and middle grade was 6.5%. My not applicable category is usually the nonfiction that I read. I don't know how to put that in an age range, but if I were to put my nonfiction in an age category, it would probably be adult. None of the nonfiction I read was specifically for children or anything like that. This is just for my interest. I don't really have any goals for the format in which I consume my books, but this is just interesting to me. 85.5% of all the books that I read were via audio, which is absolutely insane. Last year that number was closer to like 50 or 60%, but this year definitely used my library a lot for that audiobook feature. That's about 171 books were consumed via my ears. The last set of graphs that I have are where I got these books from. So 42.5% of the books that I read were from the library this year, which amounts to 85 books. Last year in 2020, about 30% of the books that I read were from the library, so I definitely improved on that number. And I'm still going to continue to use the library and not purchase as many books this year. I still purchased 29% of my reads this year, and I'd like to be a little bit more mindful about what I'm buying for sure. That's going to be something I'm going to be continuously working on, but I'm really happy with the amount of books that I had owned previous to 2021, as well as using my library. Overall, I'm super happy with my 2021 reading stats. At this very end of this video, I just want to do a rapid fire wrap up of my 2021 reading goals and to let you know which of those goals were successful. I have another video coming out where I talk about my 2022 goals, so stay tuned for that. So I had a goal to read 25 hard sci-fi books, and I read 49. Another goal was to read 20 nonfiction books, and I only read 15. So that was still a bit of a stretch. I read 15 the previous year as well, but I would like to read more nonfiction in general. So this is something I'm definitely going to be focusing on and try to read at least one per month, if not two, to try to meet that for 2022. Another goal was to read 5 disability books, and I read 8. 5 trans books, and I read 13. Finished all my owned outstanding series. I completed 2, and I've decided to DNF the rest. T. Published 1 video per month. I absolutely smashed this and almost published 1 video a week. Read 50 books by BIPOC authors. I read about 75 books by BIPOC authors, which I think is pretty great, but I could always be doing better considering I read 208 books. So definitely want to increase my overall average of BIPOC authors closer to that 50% mark. Read 50 queer books. I read about 60 queer books this year. Considering I didn't read any queer books until about June or May, I think that that's pretty good. Definitely going to be a focus for next year. I read 208 out of 100 books. My goal was 100 and I completely smashed it. I used my library more. I kept my reading journal updated. One goal I completely and utterly failed at was writing book reviews. I did not do very good at this. My reviews were in video form and I just couldn't translate that into written form. So maybe something I want to continue doing or try to do next year, but unsure if I can be successful. I've decided not to work on my old novel. It's been so many years since I put that novel down that I don't feel called to return to that story. I feel like it had so many issues that it would have to be scrapped anyway or started over. The concept is there, but again, I could take that concept and just start from scratch. So It is what it is. And then my last goal that I had was to add closed captions to all of my videos. I am working on this still. I have about 10 videos left on my channel that do not have closed caption on them, and I am working through them slowly as time goes on. Those were my 2021 reading stats. I hope you had an excellent reading year, and I will see you in 2022. Bye.